The band began a slow, elegant tune. The room blurred as Luca guided me toward the center of the floor. His hand settled at the small of my back, warm, steady, impossible to ignore. For a man who looked carved from discipline, he moved with effortless grace. Each step drew me closer to his rhythm, to the faint scent of cedar and something darker that clung to his suit. "You dance well," I said, trying to sound casual while my heart drummed against my ribs. "My mother insisted I learn," he replied. "She believed a man should know how to lead without forcing anyone to follow." That sentence sat between us, soft but weighted. When I looked up, his amber, brown eyes caught the ballroom light. For a moment, the noise, the laughter, even Nathan's jealous stare, all of it vanished. It was just us and the storm beginning to press against the windows. "You know," he said quietly, "I didn't make the offer out of pity. You looked like someone who deserved a better evening." I wanted to tell him that better evenings weren't in my budget. That pretending would only make tomorrow lonelier. But instead, I let him pull me a little closer. Across the room, my mother was watching, her eyebrows arched in speculation. Vanessa whispered something to Nathan that made him scowl. "Good," let him wonder. The song shifted into something slower, sweeter. Luca's thumb traced a light pattern along my back as we turned. I felt a tremor of heat run up my spine. Part embarrassment, part surprise at how safe it felt. "You're full of contradictions," I said finally. "How so?" "You look like trouble but talk like a gentleman." He smiled, small and real. "Maybe I'm both." Lightning flickered outside, catching the reflection of the city on the ballroom windows. For a heartbeat, the glass became a mirror. I saw us there, two strangers pretending connection, and wondered why it felt like remembering instead of pretending. When the song ended, applause rippled through the guests. Luca released me slowly, his hand lingering a second longer than politeness required. "Thank you for the dance, Mrs. DeSantis," he murmured, voice playful. "Mrs. DeSantis," I repeated, tasting the absurdity of it, and the warmth that followed. "Don't get used to it." He inclined his head. "We'll see." As he escorted me back to my table, conversation buzzed around us, speculation blooming like perfume. For the first time all evening I didn't care. Let them talk. Because for one improbable moment I'd felt seen. And somewhere behind that feeling, beneath the music and the thunder, and the weight of everything I'd been surviving, a spark began to flicker. Something that might have been curiosity, or maybe the first hint of danger disguised as hope. I thought that would be the end of it. One dance, one polite goodbye. But Luca didn't drift back into the crowd. He followed me to my table, and sat down like we were old friends sharing a secret. "You don't seem like a man who spends evenings making up stories," I said, half teasing, half testing. He shrugged lightly. "Sometimes stories are easier than truths. People believe them faster." "Then what's your truth?" I asked. He studied me for a beat before answering. "That I noticed you long before you noticed me." My pulse tripped. "And what exactly did you notice?" "That you kept looking for a reason to leave," he said. "But you stayed. That means you're braver than you think." His words slid under my defenses, quiet but precise. I forced a laugh. "You don't know me well enough to decide that." "Maybe not," he admitted, "but I'd like to." Outside, thunder deepened. The storm had turned the city lights into ripples of gold and violet across the windows. My family was still whispering. My ex-husband was still pretending not to watch. But Luca sat there like none of it mattered. "Tell me something, Emma," he said. "Why do you let them make you feel like a guest in your own life?" "I don't." I started, then stopped. "Because maybe I did." He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "Then don't. For tonight, pretend you belong to something that doesn't need permission." "Belong to me?" I blinked. "You have a talent for dramatic declarations." "It's not drama," he said simply. "It's clarity." Then, softer, "Pretend you're my wife, just for the evening. Let everyone believe you're not alone." The proposal hung in the air, half joke, half challenge. I should have laughed, brushed it off. Instead, I looked at him, at the steadiness behind the teasing, and realized he was serious. "Why?" I asked finally. "Because it would solve two problems," he said. "Yours and mine. My family has a way of turning every social event into an ambush about marriage. If they think I've already chosen someone, they'll stop asking questions. And your family will stop treating you like a cautionary tale." It was madness. But so was the way his voice curled around my name. "You don't even know me." I whispered. Then tonight can be the beginning of that. He stood, extending his hand again. Come on, Mrs. DeSantis. They're watching. I hesitated only long enough to see Nathan's expression across the room, confusion edging into jealousy. That did it. I placed my hand in Luca's. The second dance began, slower this time. His hand returned to the small of my back, steady and sure. I tried not to notice how easily our movements fell into sync. You're dangerous, I said under my breath. He smiled. Only if you believe rumors. What kind of rumors? The kind that sound more interesting than the truth. And what is the truth? He met my eyes, his voice low enough to feel rather than hear. That I don't like watching you doubt yourself. Something in my chest shifted. It wasn't quite trust, not yet. But it was recognition. The sort that sneaks up on you when you've been starved for kindness. When the song faded, he didn't let go immediately. Would you like a drink? He asked. I nodded because my voice had vanished. At the bar, the waiter poured champagne. Luca handed me a glass and raised his own. To new beginnings, he said. I clinked my glass against his. To very strange arrangements. He laughed softly. Strange can be good. Sometimes it's the only thing that makes sense. Though we stood there in the hum of the ballroom. Thunder rolling outside, gossip swirling inside, 1,000 small judgments dissolving under the weight of something unexpected. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. The rain had followed me home that night, drumming against my apartment windows like a restless heartbeat. I'd hung up my dress, scrubbed off the perfume and the pity, and told myself the whole thing meant nothing. Just a dance. Just a moment. But I couldn't stop replaying it. The way Luca's hand fit against my back, the way his gaze didn't flinch when the world around us kept spinning. By Monday morning, my phone was a battlefield of texts. Who was that man? Are you seeing someone new? Even my mother had called, leaving a message full of Fox concern. Your father and I are worried about appearances, Emma. I muted every notification. The hospital at least offered refuge, the one place where everything made sense. 12-hour shifts, endless tasks, lives that needed saving. There was no room there for fairy tales or dangerous men with foreign accents. Until he showed up. It was after my evening rounds when I saw him. Standing by the pediatric wing's large windows, watching the rain on the glass. The last person I expected to find in a hospital hallway was Luca DeSantis, in a charcoal suit that made him look completely out of place and somehow entirely at home. How did you? I started. He smiled faintly. You mentioned the hospital at the wedding. I took a chance. You shouldn't be here, I said, glancing toward the nurse's station. We have security and visiting rules. I'm not visiting a patient, he said. I'm visiting you. My pulse skipped, betraying me. Why? He stepped closer, enough that I caught the faint scent of cedar again. Because I wanted to know if what happened at that wedding felt real to you, or if I imagined it. I told you. It was pretend, maybe, he said quietly. But you didn't pretend to breathe the way you did when I touched you. For a moment, I forgot how to speak. The hallway lights cast long reflections across the floor, and somewhere down the corridor, a heart monitor beeped steadily, the only reminder that reality still existed. What do you want from me, Luca? I asked finally. He hesitated, like he was weighing honesty against charm. Then, dinner, conversation. The truth about why you looked like you were holding your world together with string the other night. That's none of your business. It became my business the moment those men started watching you at the wedding. That stopped me cold. What men? His expression darkened. The ones near the bar, pretending to be part of the groom's family. They weren't. I know their faces. I should have realized sooner. I stared at him. You think someone was? What? Spying on you? At my sister's wedding? I think, he said, his voice low, that my world sometimes spills into places it doesn't belong. And you were standing too close. Your world. He looked out at the rain again, jaw tight. One I don't talk about in hospital corridors. Then, turning back to me, softer now, let me make it right. Dinner tomorrow night, my place. No pretending this time. Every instinct said no. Every sensible thought screamed run, but he said it like an invitation wrapped in a promise, and maybe a warning. I nodded once. One dinner, I said. His smile was slow, dangerous, and genuine. One dinner, he repeated, and then he was gone, leaving the faint smell of rain and cedar and a question I already knew I'd regret answering. That night, I stood at my window again, city lights blurring through the glass. Somewhere out there, Luca's world waited. Sharp-edged, beautiful, and dangerous. And I had just agreed to step into it. The following night Chicago felt rinsed clean. Rain had washed the streets into shining ribbons of light, the kind of weather that made the city look like a reflection of itself. I almost turned back twice on the way to Luca's building, rehearsing excuses. Overtime, a sick child, anything. But I still found myself standing in front of the glass tower that scraped the clouds. The concierge greeted me by name before I even spoke. That should have been my first warning. The elevator ride felt endless, every floor number glowing like a heartbeat. When the doors opened, I stepped into a penthouse that smelled faintly of espresso and cedar. Floor to ceiling windows framed the lake, black and restless beneath the storm clouds. "You came?" Luca said, emerging from the kitchen with 2 wine glasses. "I said I would," I replied, though it sounded more like a confession than a statement. He handed me a glass of red that looked expensive enough to need a background check. "To second chances," he said. I clinked the rim lightly. "To curiosity," I countered. Dinner was already waiting, roasted sea bass, lemon, and herbs so delicate they almost erased the hospital cafeteria from my memory. We talked at first about safe things. Music, childhood, the weather's stubborn mood swings. He listened like he was collecting each word, filing it away. When silence finally settled between us, it wasn't awkward. It was heavy with all the questions I hadn't asked. "Who taught you to cook like this?" I asked. "My mother," he said, smiling for the first time that evening. "She believed food could keep people honest. You can't lie while you're feeding someone. It shows in the taste." "That's poetic," I said. "It's practical," he corrected. "Poetry gets people hurt." Something flickered behind his eyes then, an old scar of memory that hadn't healed clean. I wanted to ask, "Who hurt you?" But I already sensed the answer might not be a person. It might be a life. When he spoke again, his tone had changed. "Do you always do that?" "Do what?" "Watch people like you're mapping the exits." I set my fork down. "Habit of a single mother. You learn to plan escape routes." He nodded slowly, as if the answer pleased him. "Smart, keep that instinct. My world doesn't forgive the unprepared." There it was again, that phrase, my world. I leaned forward. "You keep saying that. What does it mean?" He studied me for a long time, then pushed back his chair and crossed to the window. Lightning cracked over the lake, and for a moment his reflection looked like a stranger made of shadows. "It means," he said quietly, "that I trade in things that don't always come with receipts: influence, protection, favors that never reach paper. It started as family business and became survival." "You're telling me you're, what, a criminal?" "I'm telling you," he said, turning back to me, "that some worlds run on different laws. I try to keep the two apart. You and your daughter live in the world that should be protected, not touched." My breath caught. "Then why invite me here?" "Because you were already touched," he said. "The night of the wedding, someone took photos of us together. People I don't trust. I needed to know if you'd noticed anyone following you." A chill threaded down my spine. "No one." He exhaled, shoulders tightening. "Good. Still, it's safer if I know where you are. At least until I clean this up." "I don't need protecting," I said, though my voice betrayed uncertainty. He stepped closer. "Everyone says that until they do." The air between us changed, no longer just warning or curiosity, but something charged. He reached up, brushed a damp strand of hair from my temple, and for a heartbeat, the world outside the windows didn't exist. Then the elevator chimed. Luca's expression sharpened. "Stay here." He crossed the room in 3 silent strides and disappeared around the corner. Voices, low, male, unfamiliar, echoed faintly from the foyer. I caught one word through the hum of Rain: Volkov. A name heavy with trouble. When Luca returned, his jaw was tight. "I have to take care of something tonight," he said. "I'll have a driver take you home." "Luca." He shook his head. "Please. Just this once, do as I ask." I should have argued, demanded explanations, but the storm outside had turned violent, and something in his voice, protective, almost desperate, made me stand. The elevator ride down felt colder this time. In the reflection of the glass, I saw a woman who'd stepped into a story she didn't understand, and somewhere far above, in that glittering tower, a man with too many secrets was about to decide how deep she would fall. The next morning, the storm had vanished, leaving the city washed clean but uneasy. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Luca's expression when he'd heard that name, a flicker of worry buried under steel. I dropped Sophie off at kindergarten, forced a smile, and drove to the hospital. Work was my reset button. Charts, vitals, tiny hands clutching mine. For a few blessed hours, I was simply Nurse Emma Reed, not the woman who dined in a glass tower with a man who might be trouble. But at noon, a package arrived at the front desk, no return address. Just my name, handwritten in steady, unfamiliar script. Inside was a single white camellia wrapped in tissue paper and a small note: "Stay away from him." No signature, no explanation. I reread the words until they blurred. Whoever had sent it knew. Not just my name, they knew him. My hands shook as I slipped the note into my pocket. By the end of my shift, I'd convinced myself it was nothing. A prank, a coincidence, maybe even some hospital mix-up. I almost believed it, right up until I stepped outside and found Luca leaning against a black car parked by the curb. "Rough day?" he asked lightly, but his eyes told another story. They were scanning the street, the roof lines, everything. I held out the note. "Someone delivered this to me at work." He read it once, jaw tightening. Then he folded it and slid it into his coat. "You should have called me." I didn't know if it meant anything. "It means someone is watching," he said quietly, "and whoever it is wants you frightened." My pulse skipped. Why me? Because fear travels faster than truth. He motioned for me to get into the car. "Come with me. Somewhere public. Somewhere we can talk." We ended up at a cafe near the river. The kind of place that smelled like burnt espresso and cinnamon. Luca sat across from me, hands wrapped around his coffee cup like he needed the heat. "There are circles in this city," he said finally, "people who move money and favors through channels the law doesn't reach. My family built part of it years ago. I've spent most of my life trying to keep it clean. Trying to make it something that doesn't destroy everyone it touches. And now it's touching me." He met my gaze. "I'm trying to stop that." For a long moment neither of us spoke. Outside, the river glimmered under the pale sun, deceptively calm. "I can handle secrets," I said at last. "I just need to know which ones might follow me home." He exhaled, a sound halfway between relief and regret. "That's exactly what I'm trying to figure out." The waitress refilled our cups, and for the first time that day, his shoulders eased a little. "Emma," he said softly, "you have every reason to walk away. But if you stay, I need you to trust that I'll keep the storms from reaching you again." I looked at him. This man who had appeared out of nowhere, who spoke like a confession wrapped in a promise, and realized that whatever path I chose next, ordinary was no longer an option. Outside, the city's reflection shimmered in the water like a second world waiting to be stepped into. And I wasn't sure anymore which one belonged to me. 2 days passed before the next ripple hit. I tried to fall back into rhythm. Wake up, make Sophie's oatmeal, fold hospital scrubs warm from the dryer. But every ordinary sound carried an echo of unease. The white camellia lay pressed between pages of a notebook on my nightstand, a silent reminder that someone had chosen me as a message board. By Thursday, Luca's silence was starting to feel like distance rather than protection. Then, just after sunset, my phone buzzed with a single text: "Still watching out for you. Need to talk. L." 10 minutes later, headlights swept across the building. His car waited at the curb, black paint glinting under the streetlight. "Are you going to keep materializing outside my apartment?" I asked as I slid in beside him. "Until I'm sure you're safe," he said simply. "I found out who sent the flower." My pulse quickened. "Woo." He hesitated, then pulled a small envelope from the dashboard compartment and handed it to me. Inside was a photo, grainy, slightly out of focus, but unmistakably taken from the wedding. Me and Luca dancing, his hand at my back. And in the corner, half hidden by a column, a man watching. "His name is Ronan Vale," Luca said quietly. "Old business partner of my father's. When my family tried to take the company legitimate, he refused. Blamed me for cutting him out. The camellia was his signature once. Back when he wanted to frighten competitors, not warn them. So the warning was from him. Why not just come to you?" "Because he's not really warning me," Luca said. "He's warning you that he can reach the people I care about." For a moment, the air in the car felt thin. "Then what do we do?" He started the engine but didn't move. "You go on with your life as though nothing's changed." "I'll handle Vale." "That's not an answer," I said. He turned toward me. the dashboard lights soft against his profile. I'm trying to protect you without pulling you deeper in. You already did, I said quietly. The night you asked me to dance. For the first time since we met, he didn't try to charm his way out of silence. He just looked at me, eyes steady, the faintest trace of regret threading through his composure. I'm sorry, he said finally. If I could rewrite that night, I wouldn't let you. I interrupted. Because that's also the night someone finally looked at me like I mattered. He exhaled slowly, then reached across the console, his fingers brushing mine. You matter more than you know? Outside, a siren wailed somewhere distant, the city's heartbeat pulsing against the rain-washed glass. Luca's phone buzzed once, an unread message lighting the screen with a name I didn't recognize. He silenced it immediately, but not before I caught the first word Ronan. Another warning. I asked. Maybe, he said. Or maybe it's an invitation. He glanced toward the window, toward the skyline flickering with restless light. If I can end this, Emma, you and Sophie can have peace again. But I need you to trust me one more time. A trust. Such a small word for something so impossible. Still, when he reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. Morning crept into the apartment like hesitation. Sophie was still asleep, one arm flung over her favorite stuffed rabbit, her breathing steady in the half-light. I watched her for a moment and tried to convince myself that normal still existed. Breakfast, cartoons, the small sanctuary of routine. But Luca's words wouldn't let me rest. If I can end this, you and Sophie can have peace again. Peace. The word sounded like a luxury item we couldn't afford. I made coffee and stared out at the quiet street. I could walk away now, change my number, move apartments, start over somewhere that didn't echo with footsteps I couldn't name. Or I could stay. Trust a man whose world was built on shadows, but whose eyes had promised something steady. By the time Maya arrived to drop off a book she'd borrowed, my decision still sat unfinished inside me. She took one look at my face and sighed. You're thinking about him again? Always? I admitted. She set the book on the counter. Then either stop pretending you're not involved, or stop seeing him. The middle ground is where people drown. After she left, I picked up my phone. A single message waited: roof garden. Noon. I almost deleted it. Instead, I texted on my way and grabbed my coat. The roof garden was a secret above the noise. A sweep of ivy and glass framed by the skyline. Luca stood near the railing, the wind tugging at his dark coat. When he turned, the city's light caught the faint scar along his jaw, softening what the world had hardened. I shouldn't have asked you to come, he said, but I needed you to see something. He handed me a file folder, plain, unmarked. Inside were papers, contracts, photographs, bank ledgers filled with names I didn't recognize. This is what Vale's after, he explained. He wants control of these accounts. If he gets them, he can buy half the people who keep this city running. And you're showing me because I want you to understand the risk, before you decide how far you'll stand beside me. I looked down at the papers, at the lives hidden between numbers. If I walk away now, will it make things safer for Sophie? For a while, he admitted, but not for me. The wind caught the edge of one photograph. A younger Luca beside a woman with the same amber eyes. His mother, maybe. He caught it before it flew away, fingers tightening just slightly. I made you part of this, he said, and I hate myself for it. But I also. He stopped, the words unraveling. I stepped closer, close enough to smell the faint trace of cedar again. Say it, I whispered. I also can't imagine going back to the quiet before I met you. The truth of it hovered between us, fragile and dangerous. Down below, horns echoed through the streets. Up here, the city felt miles away. You're asking me to choose, I said. To stay in a life I don't understand, or to run from the only thing that's felt real in years. I'm asking you to believe that we can build something honest inside the chaos. He replied, even if it scares you. It did scare me. Because somewhere between that first dance and this moment on the rooftop, I'd started to want exactly that. I handed him back the folder, but kept his gaze. Then we fight smart, I said. For her, for us, for whatever this is. His shoulders eased, the smallest exhale of hope. Together, then, together. He reached for my hand, the wind tangled our fingers, city lights burning around us like constellations learning new names. And for the first time since the wedding, I stopped looking for exits. The next evening the city wore its usual disguise. Bright, busy, pretending nothing ever happened. I was finishing charts in the nurse's station when a familiar shape filled the glass doors. Luca. No suit tonight, just a dark sweater, collar turned up against the wind. He looked out of place among the hospital's antiseptic brightness, a storm framed in fluorescent light. I needed to see you, he said quietly when I met him in the staff lounge. Ronan reached out again. Every nerve in my body went tight. What did he say? That he wants to meet. Not to threaten this time, to negotiate. And you're considering it. He gave a small, humorless smile. In my world, refusing a conversation can sound like declaring war. I leaned back against the counter. You told me you wanted to make things legitimate. Doesn't meeting him just drag you backward? It might, he said. But if I don't, he'll come at the people around me. That means you. There it was again. The shadow stretching between his world and mine. I hated it, but I also understood the logic that ruled him. The kind born from too many years managing danger as if it were currency. What do you need from me? I asked. Honesty, he said. If this ever becomes too much, walk away. I'd rather lose you safely than keep you frightened. I swallowed hard. And if I'm already frightened but don't want to leave? His eyes softened. Then you stay brave and I stay careful. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he reached into his coat and set a small silver pendant on the counter, a simple shape, no markings. Wear it, he said. It's a tracker, nothing invasive. It lets me know you're all right. I hesitated, then fastened the thin chain around my neck. The metal was cool against my skin, a reminder that trust could sometimes look like surrender. Luca, I said finally. If something goes wrong at that meeting, promise me you won't try to handle it alone. He nodded once, but the look in his eyes said he would do exactly that. That night I couldn't sleep. The wind pressed against the windows, and the city's sirens wove in and out of the darkness. I reached for the pendant, feeling the pulse beneath it. Connection and warning, both in one steady beat. My phone buzzed just after midnight, meeting set for tomorrow. No surprises, I hope. No name, just an initial. I knew without asking that Luca had received the same message. I typed back before fear could stop me. Whatever happens, we face it together. The reply came almost instantly. That's exactly what I was counting on. Morning would bring whatever reckoning waited between Luca and his past. But as I watched Sophie sleeping peacefully, I realized that confrontation didn't always mean battle. It could mean finally refusing to live as a ghost in someone else's story. And when the sun began to edge through the curtains, I decided whatever truth tomorrow brought, I would meet it head on. Because running no longer felt like safety. It felt like forgetting how to live. The morning rose gray and cold, a sky without conviction. Sophie hummed at the breakfast table, drawing houses with windows big enough for sunlight to pour through. I envied her certainty that walls always kept people safe. Luca texted just after 9, leaving soon. We'll call after the meeting. No location, no details. Just that. I wanted to believe it meant confidence. Instead it felt like a goodbye carefully worded as a promise. All day I moved through the hospital like a ghost, taking vitals, adjusting IVs, smiling on instinct. My mind replayed every look, every sentence between us. Stay brave, I'll stay careful. Careful, I realized, was a word people used right before something broke. When my shift ended, the pendant against my skin pulsed once, barely noticeable, just enough to make my breath catch. I didn't know what that meant. A signal, a test, a mistake. My phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Emma. Luca's voice, low but steady. Where are you? On my way back. The meeting happened. It didn't go the way either of us planned. What does that mean? Silence. Then, it means Ronan wanted to talk about you. My stomach turned. Me. Why? He said you reminded him of someone. My mother. Luca let out a short breath. He knew her, once, before everything fractured. He called you the second chance he thought I'd never get. That sounds almost kind. It isn't. It's leverage disguised as sentiment. He's making a point. Every good thing in my life is something he can touch if he chooses. I gripped the phone tighter. And what did you tell him? That touching you comes with a price he can't afford. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The city hummed through the line. Traffic, rain, 1,000 small sounds of distance. Luca? I whispered. I don't want to be the reason you're fighting ghosts. You're not, he said. You're the reason I stopped pretending they don't exist. The line crackled softly, then quieted. When can I see you? I asked. Tonight? He said. I need to show you something. When he arrived, the air between us carried all the words we hadn't said. He handed me a small envelope, lighter than I expected. Inside was the photo from the wedding, the one of us dancing, smiling like we already belonged to each other. Ronan sent it, Luca said. He wrote one line on the back. I turned the picture over. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. Even storms can choose what they save. I met Luca's eyes. What does it mean? He exhaled slowly. Maybe that he's done testing me. Or maybe that he wants to see if I can protect something without breaking it. And can you? He stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper. I'm trying. I reached up, fingers brushing the edge of the pendant still warm against my skin. Then try with me, not for me. Something shifted in his expression. A quiet surrender. The kind that comes when someone realizes they're no longer fighting alone. He nodded once. Together then. Together? I echoed. Outside the rain had started again, soft and steady. It sounded less like warning this time, more like a rhythm finding its way back to calm. A week passed before the city remembered how to breathe. The rain finally stopped, leaving puddles that mirrored a pale spring sky. Sophie was back to drawing suns instead of clouds, and the world began to sound like ordinary life again. Coffee machines, car horns, laughter spilling from apartment balconies. I'd forgotten how comforting ordinary could be. Luca kept his word: no more unannounced visits, no more shadows lurking at the edges of our days. He called each morning just to ask if we'd slept, as if routine itself might keep the chaos at bay. That Saturday he invited us to the farmer's market near the lake. Sophie darted from stall to stall, fascinated by baskets of apples polished like jewels. Luca followed her with patient amusement, hands in his pockets, the hint of a smile softening everything sharp about him. Watching them together felt like looking at a life that might actually fit. Still worried? He asked quietly when we paused by the flower stand. Always, I admitted. But it's starting to feel like a habit I can outgrow. He chose a white camellia from the table, the same kind that once arrived wrapped in warning, and handed it to me. Maybe it's time we change what this means. I turned the bloom in my hand. From a threat to a promise. Exactly. For the first time, the symbol didn't feel like fear. It felt like closure. That evening, Sophie fell asleep on the couch, lulled by the hum of rain against the balcony rail. Luca and I sat nearby, the quiet stretching between us not as distance but as ease. Do you think peace ever lasts? I asked. It lasts as long as people keep choosing it, he said. It's work, not luck. And what happens when the next storm comes? Then we remind each other why we stayed. Outside, the clouds drifted apart, revealing a sliver of moonlight. It caught the silver pendant still resting at my throat. Luca reached over and traced its edge with his thumb. Keep it, he said, not as a safeguard, just as proof that some things worth protecting can survive the storm. I smiled. You and your metaphors. They're the only languages I trust. We sat like that for a long while. No secrets, no masks, just the quiet rhythm of two lives learning how to exist in the same calm after so much noise. When I finally closed my eyes, I realized I wasn't waiting for the next warning anymore. I was learning how to stay. Spring unfolded slowly, as if the world itself needed time to relearn warmth. By April, the park near the lake had turned green again, and Sophie's laughter carried on the breeze every Saturday morning. Life, for once, was measured not in what we feared, but in how fully we showed up for it. Luca had opened a small cafe near the hospital, a corner place with tall windows and the smell of espresso spilling into the street. He called it Second Light. It's what comes after storms, he said when I asked about the name. The cafe became a kind of bridge between our worlds. He'd work there in the mornings, then stop by the pediatric wing in the afternoons, bringing pastries that disappeared faster than the nurses could claim them. Seeing him there, no shadows, no disguises, was a reminder that peace didn't have to be loud to be real. One afternoon, I found him wiping tables just before closing. Sophie was drawing on a napkin, tongue between her teeth, concentration fierce. She says she wants to design the sign for your next cafe. I told him. He smiled. Then I'd better open another one. I leaned against the counter. Do you ever miss the rush? The power, the chaos? Sometimes, he admitted. But only the illusion of control that came with it. This, he gestured around the small cafe, is harder and quieter. It's also honest. I nodded. honest suits you. He took my hand, fingers intertwining with mine. A gesture so ordinary and so astonishingly safe that it silenced everything else. Outside, the evening light spilled across the tables, turning every reflection into gold. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was simply standing where I wanted to be. Emma, he said softly, what if this isn't the end of our story, but the beginning neither of us expected? Then we start it properly, I said. No pretending this time. He kissed my forehead, light certain, no pretending. That night, as Sophie slept and the city settled into its calm hum, I opened the window and let the wind carry in the smell of rain returning from somewhere far away. Not a threat this time, just the steady rhythm of weather and life continuing. The pendant still hung at my throat, but I no longer wore it for safety. It was a reminder of how far we'd come, how trust, once fragile, had learned to stand on its own. Some stories end with storms breaking. Ours began with what we chose to build after. 3 years later, the city had softened around the edges. Towers still scraped the sky, traffic still hummed its restless tune, but for us, time had found a quieter rhythm. Second Light now had 2 locations. The second one across from the hospital. Luca called it coincidence. But I knew he just wanted to be near the place where our worlds first collided. Every morning he brewed coffee strong enough to wake the street, and every evening Sophie helped wipe the tables, humming the same song she used to draw suns to. I still worked my shifts at the children's ward. Life had folded itself into a balance I never thought possible. Long hours, small moments, steady peace. Sometimes a new nurse would glance at the photo on my desk, Luca and me standing under the cafe sign, and ask how we'd met. At a wedding, I'd say smiling. He asked me to dance. I never added the rest. Some stories don't need their storms retold. On our anniversary, the only one we counted, we drove to the lake just before dawn. The water was glass, the horizon thin with gold. Sophie slept in the back seat, her sketchbook open on her lap. Luca reached for my hand over the console. Remember the first time we watched a sunrise together? He asked. It was through a hospital window, I said. After a night neither of us wanted to remember. And now we get to remember everything. He smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. We made it. Then, not made it, I said softly. Still making it. We stepped out onto the pier, the air cool and clean. The light spread slow and certain, painting the water in amber streaks. It felt like a promise, not that life would always be easy, but that it would always be ours to choose. Luca slipped his arm around me, resting his chin on my hair. Here's to what's next, he murmured. Whatever it is, I said, we'll meet it the same way we began, together. The sun cleared the horizon. For a heartbeat, the world held still. 2 silhouettes framed against a new day, no longer defined by storms or shadows, but by the calm they had learned to keep. And as the light broke over the lake, I finally understood what he'd meant all those years ago. Even storms can choose what they save.